Welcome to Overachiever Recovery, the podcast for successful women who are ready to be more than just productive. I'm Dasha, a recovered overachiever myself. My goal is for you to reclaim the life you're meant to live, rooted in desire and self-interest. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Overachiever Recovery. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're focusing on a big topic. Boundaries. And not just any boundaries, but the kinds that start out as necessary self-protection and end up turning into walls. And they shut out the relationships we're actually trying to preserve. Because otherwise, you would just move away from those relationships altogether. So let's talk about it. As overachievers, we tend to run without a lot of boundaries for a long time. We say yes, take on more, fix, help, and carry burdens that are usually not ours. And we essentially please and accommodate others at our expense. Until we hit a point where we're exhausted, resentful, and burnt out. That's usually when we discover boundaries. And at first, they feel life-changing. But sometimes in the process of protecting ourselves after years of overgiving, our boundaries get rigid. They keep us safe, but they can also keep us separate. So here's the thing. As a therapist and a coach, I work with a lot of individuals and couples. And I see this a lot in therapy culture and online. The advice goes something like this. Write down the behaviors that you won't tolerate. Inform others of your boundaries, and if someone crosses them, walk away. And listen, there is truth in that. I'm not here to bash boundaries. Boundaries are essential. They are how we know where we end and someone else begins. They protect our nervous systems, our time, our energy. But sometimes boundaries create healthy connection and a good amount of give and take. And some boundaries lead to complete disconnection. They can end up damaging the relationship you're trying to improve through boundaries. Let me explain. Here's what I see. Too often, we treat boundaries like they're hard lines in the sand. Here's my deal, respect it or get out. It's clean, it's empowering, but it's also isolating. Let me give you an example from romantic relationships. One I see all the time. Let's say you're someone who needs space after a fight. You shut down when emotions run high. But your partner, they want to talk about it right away. That's how they feel safe, by processing and reconnecting. Now imagine you say to them, my boundary is that I need space. I'm not going to talk to you when you're angry. Well, ideally, we would want to say, I'm not going to talk to you when I'm angry, but let's be realistic here. We often live a pretty unconscious life. So I got distracted. The boundary would sound like, my boundary is that I need space. I'm not going to talk to you when one of us is angry. You need to respect that going forward. Sounds clear, right? But how do you think that lands for your partner? Probably like a door slammed in their face. And sometimes this does turn into a literal door. They're hurting, afraid of rejection and abandonment, and you're gone. I don't think I'm wrong here, but I bet you're also expecting that they do all the work of enforcing your boundary and giving you that space. You are making them responsible for enforcing your boundaries for you, which is not how it works. So now we've got two dysregulated people, both trying to protect themselves, but feeling more disconnected and hurt than before. There is a better way. My idea of boundaries is that they're not just about enforcement. They're about agreement. The better version of that moment doesn't happen in a moment. It happens ahead of time, when things are calm, when you can say, Honey, I have noticed that I really need time to cool down when we argue. I want to stay connected to you, and I also know that I need a break to regulate my body back into calm. So what if we agreed that if one of us needed space, we will take a 20-minute breather and then come back and reconnect? That's not just a boundary. It's a relational agreement. It's not me versus you. It's us learning how to stay connected while honoring our differences and our needs. And hey, if 20 minutes is not enough, you come back as promised and find another time-bound timeout. Let's reconnect in 2 hours and talk so that we can repair. I'm a big fan of agreements because agreements make each person take radical responsibility for their behavior and their needs. You're saying, I know my limits and I'm going to take care of myself and consider your needs too. And I'll be honest, this is where the real emotional work is. It's not just about saying no and choosing yourself. And maybe you have to have this rigid boundary at first, as you're just trying to stop overfunctioning for everyone. But later on, the goal is to set more relational boundaries. That means learning how to pause, name what's true for you, take ownership of your part, and keep the relationship intact. That's a real relational boundary. And if you can't even agree on some basic relational boundaries with your partner, please consider if you're choosing the relationship with them over the most important relationship, one with yourself. And if you are in this tough spot, please reach out to me. Let's talk. So now I want to shift to another popular phrase related to boundaries. No is a complete sentence. Again, there's truth here. You certainly don't have to over-explain or feel guilty about it. But what can I say? We also don't need to swing the pendulum so far into focusing on our needs that we forget kindness. Saying I can't is fine. But saying I really want to support you, but I don't have the bandwidth right now, that's kindness. That's care. That keeps, especially for women. I notice that a no can sometimes feel like a rejection for a lot of my clients. And I'm not saying we need to people please or overgive. The whole point of setting boundaries and limitations on our behavior is exactly that. Not to people please or overgive or overfunction. But we can learn how to say no without making the other person feel like they're bad for asking. We can honor our limits without guilt and still nurture the relationship. That's the work. Balancing honesty with connection. Clarity of where you stand with care. Responsibility for your needs with compassion. So today, I want to leave you with this question. Where have your boundaries become walls? And how can you turn them into agreements instead? If you're in a relationship, start a conversation. What do you need when you are upset? What helps you come back into connection? And how do we both get to feel safe here? And if it's with yourself, maybe the invitation is, how can I protect my energy without isolating myself? How can I say no with kindness? So thank you for showing up. Thank you for being real. And remember, your emotional strength isn't just in your boundaries. It's in your ability to stay connected while honoring yourself. If you need support, you can find me at coachingbydasha.com. I personally think there is a lot of relational damage done by individual therapists that promote rigid boundaries, leaving relationships vulnerable to disconnection. There is a better way. If this episode spoke to you, it isn't a coincidence you're here. If you're ready to start living life on your terms, I would love to help you get there. Find me at coachingbydasha.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. Until next time, choose yourself.